And on the long term, coming back to the one of the issues I think that really is overlooked for these dual language programs is really looking at language as an asset. And by that, I really say a lot of times, I was maybe shut down. But if you've ever seen one of the presentations, I always talk about that the AP track for the students is really the key that we need to take advantage of. And I always say that if you had a student who was a genius in math, you would ride that as far as you could, all the way to college if you could. If they're a genius in science, you would ride that as far as you could. For some reason, when it comes to language, we don't see it the same way, but that is the one key advantage every one of our dual language students shares. So why are we not seeing that as an asset and riding that as far as we can? And by that I mean making sure that our students, if they're developing high levels of Spanish, in our case, that we're not getting our students to take their AP classes early. And the key to that is very early because our students are coming out of 8th grade, many of them ready to go directly into AP Spanish language as freshmen. And I'm not speaking to the student who already has college in mind, I'm speaking really to the students who are not seeing college as part of their own history or part of the track for them. Because you give them to take an AP class early, and suddenly they're like, I just took an AP class, I have college credit. I always say that they walk a little straighter, sometimes. And I say, we really need to use that as an advantage, that then they change the mentality of those students, and they say, yes, I can, and that they're doing this early in high school. That even if they're not taking AP in math, or history, or some other class, there's still enough time in high school left that they will line their courses, and they will have taken more AP classes before they graduate, so that they are college prepared before they graduate. And on that note, I guess I'll finish up by saying that after years, and we'll talk more about this, I guess we'll go into one of our other sessions, of years of trying to get our students to get into AP early, just last week, 2 weeks ago now, losing track, my 8th graders, 31 of my 8th graders took the AP Spanish language test. So I'm waiting till July to find out the results of this class.
The advantage of going last is that everybody before you speaks to all the things that you wanted to say. Okay, here's what I was going to talk about, long-term English learners, and this is a wonderful document that we've been studying here in the district with, published by Lori Olson, and it's really a paper highlighting the issues surrounding our long-term English learners. And I may be the principal of El Moreno Language School, which traditionally has come from a foreign language immersion program, but it over time has transitioned into a dual language program. And so I've had the pleasure of working with the staff for 4 years now in understanding the needs, the different needs that comes with a change in program, going from a foreign immersion program, and Tara spoke to that, to bringing in more native speakers and understanding, as Alice said, the different instruction that has to occur when you have students who speak fluently are native Japanese speakers, along with a child who's never spoken Japanese or heard Japanese in their lives. And so it's an incredible challenge. I've had a great time having these conversations with the teachers there, and very fortunate to be able to just ride on the federal government's efforts to promote those kinds of efforts with the Foreign Language Assistance Program grant. We've got 2 block grants here in Culver City, one to support the Japanese program, one to support the Spanish program, and they really speak to some of the things that Professor Cohen and Professor Fortune had also spoken to about the whole idea of what are we expecting at the end of 12th grade for our students. Do we want them speaking in a pidgin? Or what is it really that we expect from them after being in a program for, if it's only 5 years, transitioning into a maintenance program and taking AP literature as a senior? Is that really what we want? Or is it something else? Are we going to hold ourselves to a higher standard, start assessing our students and really hearing what they actually have to say? We teach them, we tell them everything, but at the end of the road, do they actually sound like what we want them to sound like? So we are in the middle of that right now, and we're very, very in a great time. The challenge of being in this great time is that there isn't a lot in front of us. So we're happily going to be making a lot of mistakes, I think, and hoping that people will be learning from us and we'll be learning together. We've visited James' program earlier this fall and fell in love with it, and really looking into content or subject matter, subject classes in the secondary program. So those are some of the things that we're looking at here in Culver City. I will probably just limit this a few minutes into just talking about in education, and you'll hear it in the political schema as well, is talking about the needs of these English learners and how are we going to help our English learners close the achievement gap. And as an educator, I started as a monolingual speaker and speaking only English, but placed in a bilingual second grade classroom in Southgate, California, where I learned that baño, when yo tengo que ir al baño, meant I have to go to the bathroom now. And those kinds of things, that's how I learned Spanish in the very beginning. And I'm a relative newcomer to dual language education, and that's because when I started as a bilingual teacher, obviously not being bilingual, but I had an aide with me, and we taught 32 lovely second graders how to read in Spanish. And they were supposed to learn enough English that by third grade they knew English, and then they transitioned to English. And that was it's called a transitional bilingual education model. We're not going to talk about that so much because that's not what we do here. We do immersion, and I learned about immersion thanks to Prop 227, actually, because our bilingual program was one of those good programs that was swept under the rug. We had the highest scores, we had great reclassification rates. Our students who had learned in the bilingual program, their SAT-9 scores were the highest of the school by 5th grade. We have that data to show it. And then when 227 came and we became an English-only program, a structured English immersion program, we found that our English scores in 2nd and 3rd grade were pretty good. And when I say they were pretty good, 35% of our students were scoring proficient or advanced. Or in the SAT-9 would have been above the 60. We had an average of about 35%, and we were pretty proud of that, because it was a low-performance school. And they went up, and over through the years, the 2nd and 3rd grade got up to maybe close to 50%, so we're almost closing that achievement gap. But then when they got to 3rd grade and 4th grade and 5th grade, those scores just went down and down. And I had left the classroom by then to become a bilingual coordinator, and I had all these former parents who kept saying, my child is getting worse, what's happening? They're not learning, and they're getting these poor scores. And so I was able to do a little bit of research on that, and it took me about 2 years to convince the community that it needed to explore the program that had the highest achievement rates for their English learners, and that was based on Thomas and Collier's research that showed that two-way immersion programs were really demonstrating really high achievement for English learners. So it literally took me 2 years to find 18 students willing to engage in this grand experiment, even though there'd been over 20 years of experience with it. And even then, it was a real challenge to go through those first few years. And I just want to say that finding those 18 students was in a community, in a predominantly Latino community, but that area there where I was, that local district in LA Unified, had 65,000 students. So there were 25 elementary schools that we were going to allow students to permit into our school, and I still could only find 18 of them.